It was an ordinary Tuesday morning when Charles Devonshire, one of the wealthiest men in the country, returned home early from a board meeting. Known for his punctuality and tight schedule, Charles rarely left the office before noon. But that day, something in him urged him to leave early. As he entered his mansion, the silence of the halls was interrupted by the faint sound of the kitchen door opening. Curious, he walked towards the noise, his leather shoes tapping against the polished marble floor. To his surprise, Charles saw his maid, Maria, quietly standing in front of the refrigerator. She opened it, hesitated for a moment, then gently closed it again. She didn't take anything, just stood there, staring inside for a few seconds. Charles was hidden from view and watched in confusion. When Maria turned around and saw him, her face turned pale. Her lips parted as if to explain, but Charles raised a hand and stopped her. His tone was cold and stern. "You're dismissed. Pack your things." Maria's eyes widened in disbelief. She had worked for Charles for nearly 6 years. Never once had she stolen, never once complained. Her work was flawless, and she was respectful. But Charles wasn't interested in excuses. "You know the rules," he said sharply. "I pay you well. There's no reason to be snooping in my fridge when you're supposed to be cleaning the study." Maria looked down, fighting back tears, and simply nodded. By noon, Maria was gone. She didn't beg or plead. She packed her modest belongings into a small suitcase and quietly left the mansion. Charles felt no remorse. In his eyes, rules were rules. He didn't believe in second chances, especially when it came to trust. He had built his empire on strict principles, and he wasn't about to let sentimentality cloud his judgment. Still, something about Maria's silent departure unsettled him. Days passed, but the image of Maria standing in front of the fridge lingered in Charles's mind. Why had she looked so sad, so conflicted? She hadn't taken anything. In fact, she seemed to hesitate, as though she were about to but changed her mind. That puzzled him. It wasn't just curiosity that brought her there was something deeper in her expression. A kind of hunger, not for food, but for something else. One evening, Charles sat alone in his dining room. The table was set for 12, but he was the only one there. A silent butler served his meal, and as Charles lifted his fork, he found himself wondering, had Maria ever eaten at this table? Probably not. He never allowed the staff to mingle with his meals. But had she ever gone hungry? Was that why she had checked the fridge? Unable to let go of the feeling, Charles called his house manager. "Did Maria ever ask for food? Or complain about anything?" he asked abruptly. The manager hesitated. "Not directly, sir. But there was one thing. She sometimes took home leftovers. Just scraps. She said it was for her cat." Charles frowned. He didn't know Maria had a cat. He didn't know much about her at all. The next day, Charles did something he hadn't done in years. He drove himself across town. His car, a sleek black Mercedes, looked painfully out of place in the run-down neighborhood Maria had listed on her employment forms. He found the address with difficulty. It was a small building with peeling paint and rusted railings. He hesitated before knocking on the door of apartment 3B. A young boy answered, maybe 9 years old. His eyes were wide and cautious. "Yes?" he asked. Charles cleared his throat. "I'm looking for Maria." The boy's face fell. "She's at the clinic with my sister. But you can wait if you want." Charles stepped inside and looked around. The apartment was bare, 2 plastic chairs, a small table, and a single mattress on the floor. No cat. But clearly, Maria wasn't living alone. "Are you her grandson?" Charles asked, trying to understand. The boy shook his head. "She's not really related to us. But she takes care of us. Since our mom got sick." Charles blinked. "How many of you are there?" The boy replied, 4. "Me, my sister, and 2 other kids. Maria helps us. She brings food when she can." The pieces began to fall into place, and guilt crept into Charles's chest like a slow, cold wave. Charles sat down slowly, trying to absorb what he was hearing. Maria had never mentioned children, never asked for help. She had shown up every day, cleaned his enormous home with diligence, and never once revealed the silent burden she carried. He looked around the room again. No toys, no electronics, just a few tattered books stacked in the corner. This wasn't a temporary hardship. This was how they lived. His stomach tightened. When Maria returned, she was surprised to see him. Her hands clutched a small brown paper bag, and her eyes darted nervously between Charles and the children. "Why are you here?" she asked quietly. Charles stood, uncomfortable for perhaps the first time in years. wanted to understand, he said. Why you were at the fridge. Why you looked desperate. Maria's shoulders sagged. You didn't want to understand then. You just wanted me gone. Her words were not bitter, only honest. She walked past him and began unpacking a few bananas and rice packets from the bag. The kids gathered around her quietly, their faces lighting up at the simple sight of food. I never took anything, she said softly, without turning to face him. But some days, I wanted to. Not for me, for them. I just couldn't bring myself to steal. Not even when I had nothing left to give them. Charles felt a deep shame rise in his chest. This woman, who had worked in silence, who had taken on responsibility far beyond her duty, had never once complained or asked for help. She had chosen dignity over desperation. And he, in his arrogance, had punished her for it. Why didn't you tell me? He asked. Maria looked up at him, tired but firm. Because it wasn't your burden. And I didn't want your pity. I wanted to earn my way. Her pride was humbling. Charles had spent his life surrounded by people who wanted favors, deals, shortcuts. Maria had asked for none of that. Only work. And when faced with the choice of feeding hungry children or breaking a rule, she had chosen restraint. It made him question everything he thought he knew about character. About loyalty. About what it meant to be truly strong. I want to help, Charles finally said. The words felt strange in his mouth, foreign. Maria didn't answer immediately. Instead, she motioned for one of the girls to eat the banana slowly, to make it last. Help how? She asked. Charles didn't know. Money. A new apartment. A job again. None of it seemed enough. Any way I can, he said. I was wrong. I judged you without knowing the full story. Maria sat down beside the youngest child, who clung to her arm. I forgive you, she said. But I don't need your charity. Her words stung, but again, there was no cruelty in them. Just truth. Charles nodded slowly. Then let me give you opportunity. For them, he gestured to the children. Not pity. A future. Maria looked at him carefully, studying his face. For the first time, there was no coldness in his eyes. The next day, Charles took action. He enrolled the children in a local private school, paid a year's rent on a safer apartment, and set up a trust fund in Maria's name, not as a handout but as recognition for years of unnoticed service. He even brought her back to his home, not as a maid, but as head of domestic operations, with full authority over staff and resources. Some of his business associates mocked the move. You're getting soft, they joked. But Charles ignored them. He had seen something most people never do, true sacrifice, true humility. It changed him. Where once he saw loyalty only through the lens of contracts and performance reviews, he now recognized it in silent service and untold stories. Maria had taught him that.